Horizon Talk Radio. Horizon Talk Radio. Talk radio that deal with the real issues. You're listening to the Andy Peacher Show every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday at 8 p.m. GMT and 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah, very warm welcome. It's Andy Peacher back again on the regular free weekly slots. We'll pump the website later on, but it's horizontalkradio.wordpress.com. Tonight's guest, we've got Leonard Lawrence. Len Lawrence, poison pilot. If you remember, he got poisoned while he was working, and led to a very long-running court protection case. And now we're promoting Judges Behaving Badly blog.wordpress.com. That's Judges Behaving Badly blog.wordpress.com. Ben, good evening.
Hello, Andy.
It's been a while.
Yes, but since I last spoke to you quite some time ago, a lot of progress has been made. A lot of people have come forward, and most of the parts of the puzzle have now taken place, and we have a much greater understanding what occurred to myself, but also what's been occurring in the family courts and to a degree in the court of protection.
Yeah, I'll just say one thing, and then I'll let you do most of the talking. And when you want to break, just talk to me, and I'll ask a question or remind people of the blog. But I would have thought, all these judges, especially Judge Simon Oliver, he's got to be the number one culprit for behaving badly the most. I would have thought he'd curled underneath somewhere and hidden for forever, and just left the badness that he left behind in the past, but he's still practicing, and that's got to be wrong.
His Honour Judge Simon Oliver is a cog in a much greater wheel, and we can now put all those cogs in and give a much greater understanding. The reason I've come on this show tonight is to talk briefly about the website, His Honour Judge Simon Oliver, Judges Behaving Badly. It was set up, and I'm just looking at the website tonight. The first entry is dated the 15th of April, 2016. Now, a trainee cardiac technician, I understand, was a whistleblower, Mr. Javid Sheikh. And like all whistleblowers, including myself, he's paid a very high price for that whistleblowing. And he's recently put up on his site, it's not his, it belongs to someone else, I understand what actually happened to him. But the formation of that site around about April 2006 has triggered a lot of the victims to come forward, particularly in the Thames Valley police area. Now, Simon Oliver was appointed designated family judge at Reading County Court around 2011, and he stayed there till around 2017 when he was moved to the Central London Family Courts in Holborn. My own case came before Simon Oliver. What actually happened in 2011, I was awarded a legal aid certificate by the Legal Services Commission Special Cases Exemplary Funding Unit. And the legal aid was that my case posed a substantial question to be answered by the Court of Appeal. I was represented by the law firm Simpson Miller and St Philip's Chambers, Birmingham. And the hearing before Simon Oliver took place on the 16th of April 2016. present was a barrister, Mr. Day, and for my former wife, she was represented by the barrister Dominic Brazil, 1 King's Bench Walk Chambers. And it was for permission to appeal. And the case came before Simon Oliver. Simon Oliver was very restrictive who he allowed into that courtroom. Someone who had come along with me, a man called Captain John Hyde, was not allowed in. And the hearing took place. And before him, His Honour Judge Simon Oliver had 5 Court of Protection medical certificates which had never been disclosed to the Court of Protection by Barrister Dominic Brazil, 1 King's Bench Walk Chambers, and others. And we now know Simon Oliver was not a Court of Protection judge at that time. So he was hearing an appeal for permission to appeal with 5 Court of Protection certificates which he had been told had never been disclosed to the Court of Protection. Rather than transfer that case to a High Court family judge or a ticketed Court of Protection judge, Simon Oliver proceeded with the hearing. And actually in the hearing he actually said, it says here, does it not? It has to go to the Court of Protection. And the barrister replied, yes. During that hearing, it became apparent that my solicitor, Paul Higgs from Simpson Miller, had not briefed my barrister, Mr. Day, fully. Anyway, the hearing continued. It came to an end, and Simon Oliver reserved judgment. On the 30th of August, 2012, Simon Oliver produced his judgment, refusing me permission to appeal. But I was a patient under Part 7 of the Mental Health Act, and the judgment, I believe by Mr. Justice Gibson in the Court of Appeal, was very clear. A patient under Part 7 of the Mental Health Act does not require permission to appeal. Anyway, eventually, I appealed on Oliver's order, and the Court of Appeal asked me for a copy of the order Simon Oliver made. And despite repeated requests to Reading County Court, they would not provide me with a copy of Simon Oliver's final order. So I was running out of time in which to appeal. And a lady on the family division said she had no means of sending the order by post, by fax, by email. And I contacted the Court of Appeal. I spoke to the Court of Appeal manager, Jeff Denham. He intervened, and within 10 minutes, he had obtained the court order which Simon Oliver had issued, and the matter could then proceed. The case went to Assistant Master Sally Meacher, Court of Appeal Master. We now know that Master Meacher telephoned Simon Oliver around October 2012 and told Simon Oliver that the Court of Appeal did not have jurisdiction in my case. The case had to go to a High Court family judge. And it all went silent. Then we recovered, well, not too long ago, a private email from His Honour Judge Simon Oliver, dated the 11th of February 2013, timed 1521, to Chris Horton at Reading County Court. And it says, the papers in Lawrence need to go to Miss Bancroft Rimmer in the Court of Appeal. She is a Deputy Master. However, before they get there, I need to see the order I made, please, to see if it needs to be amended in any way. I will also need to make an order, retransferring it to the Court of Appeal. Many thanks, Simon Oliver, Designated Family Judge, Reading County Court. Now, what is interesting, we now know that it was Mrs. Justice Porfley who instructed Simon Oliver to send the case to the Court of Appeal. But there is no record of Reading County Court, His Honour Judge Simon Oliver, or anyone else telling me of this email. It was sent to me about 2 years later. But what Simon did, he actually printed off 2 copies of his email, and on one of the emails he wrote in red ink to Master Bancroft Rimmer that the appeal was to fail. And someone in the Court of Appeal decided it would be in my interest to have a copy of that email. And I now have it. If you view the website, His Honour Judge Simon Oliver, Judges Behaving Badly, you will see that email towards the top of the page. It's all there on what actually happened. So the question is, on how many other cases has Simon Oliver been sending instructions to the Court of Appeal to make sure appeals fail? As it is, Master Bancroft Rimmer also did not have authority to deal with my case. That is why the matter was returned to Reading. Over to you, Andy.
Yeah, that sounds a lot of mistakes and deliberate
No,
mistakes.
Andy, it was not mistakes. It was calculated down. Oliver should have known, well, he must have known, he's a circuit judge, that he did not have jurisdiction. So why did he continue to the hearing? And why specific instructions not to Chris Horton and Master Bancroft Rimmer? Now, what we have uncovered, that following the hearing with Simon Oliver on the 16th of April 2012, I sent to Reading County Court a copy of a transcript of a hearing at Reading County Court many years later, going back round about the 18th of August 2005. And it was Barrister Simon Cowden, instructed by Living Government Legal Services, informing His Honour Judge Charles Ellie that the official solicitor had not agreed the sale of my home. Now, Simon Oliver said, I can't produce that. Yeah. How was he able to identify that specific piece of paper? Because I wasn't allowed to talk at that hearing before him. And also, I'd actually sent it in the day after. Now, according to my solicitor, Paul Higgs at Simpson Miller, after the hearing, the very next day, on the 17th of April 2012, Simon Oliver ranks my barrister, Mr. Day at St. Philip's Chambers, Birmingham. Thereafter, Mr. Day withdrew from my case. Even as we now know, the Senior District Judge, Principal Registry of the Family Division, had instructed that my case be sent to the Court of Appeal and an appeal filed, and Mrs. Justice Porfley had instructed that the case go to appeal, the Court of Appeal. What I'm really puzzled about is why Paul Higgs at Simpson Miller, a solicitor, Bristol, was asking me to agree to sign, in direct pay, over £10,000. I was on legal aid, financed, as I said, by the Legal Aid Special Cases Unit. I couldn't afford any money, and yet I was being asked to pay Dominic Brazil, 1 King's Bench Walk, £10,000 and monies to the law firm BP Collins. What is interesting, on the 9th of September 2010, the head of 1 King's Bench Walk Chambers, Richard Ainley QC, who's a Deputy High Court judge, intervened, and he questioned Barrister Dominic Brazil, who was a member of his chambers. And I'll read an extract from it. He said, "At the hearing, Nicholas Allen, counsel, who represented you, instructed by the official solicitor, Mr. Brazil assures me that District Judge Fortgang was completely aware that you were a patient and subject to the Court of Protection. In any event, this would have been brought to his attention by Mr. Allen." In fact, Mr. Allen did bring it to District Judge Fortgang's attention. Very specifically, he produced a sworn statement by the then official solicitor, Lawrence Oates, saying that my house had been sold without permission and I was a patient under Part 7 of the Mental Health Act. But Fortgang disregarded all of that. In fact, on the 4th of August 2005, I'd made an application to get rid of the official solicitor. The hearing was before District Judge Fortgang. Present was Barrister Dominic Brazil, Barrister Nicholas Allen, QC, Helen Cliff, Solicitor Helen Cliff from the official solicitor's office, Sarah Benfield, a Reading solicitor, my ex-wife, and a man by the name of Mr. Edmonds, who had come to assist me. Fortgang then conducts a Court of Protection hearing. It lasted 5 minutes, and the hearing related to was Mr. Edmonds, Mr. Wilson, and Dr. McGee, and Dr. Murray, suitable people to care for me, and Fortgang was asking what experience they had in the Court of Protection. But Fortgang wasn't a Court of Protection judge. He had no authority to conduct that hearing. The hearing lasted about 5 minutes, and at the end of that hearing, District Judge Fortgang placed upon me a £10,000 cost order. £10,000 for literally a 5-minute, 6-minute hearing. These are the type of fees that are being charged against people who are given vulnerable status. With the hearing before Simon Oliver, Dominic Brazil, again, for a 1-hour hearing, Dominic Brazil was seeking £10,000 in costs. Again, another example of these high costs, the solicitor Susan Veronica Andrews, head of family law at BP Collins Solicitors in Gerrards Cross, Buckinghamshire. It was BP Collins who had instructed Barrister Dominic Brazil. For writing 2 letters, she attempted to claim £4,000. But the problem we all face is these are secret family courts and we're not allowed to talk about it. Back to you.
Yeah, I was going to say earlier on, you know, maybe these mistakes, or was they, but you didn't let me finish, major corruption and major, well, you've answered it anyway. And
Andy, if you assert something, it has to be evidence-based. Evidence-based is when Detective Chief Inspector Clive Driscoll said at Maggie Tushell's Children Screaming to Be Heard conference in London. If you assert something, it has to be evidence-based. Evidence-based is when there's no other reasonable explanation. Now, this is so well orchestrated what is occurring. Now, there's a recent case which has come on the website, and it involved Christopher Brooker, the Daily Telegraph journalist who also wrote for the Private Eye. He was involved with a case writing about a lady who had encountered Simon Oliver. His Honour Judge Simon Oliver at Reading County Court. However, what Oliver appears to have done, when an order divorce had been concluded in the High Court, Family Division, by a High Court judge, Simon Oliver reopened this case and got himself into all sorts of difficulties, and it ended up going to, I believe, Lord Justice Jackson made an order. That's Lord Justice Rupert Jackson, Mr. Justice Baker, and Mr. Justice Meissen. But it all stems back to Oliver reopening a case. Now, again, in my case, I wrote to Lord Justice Mumby to try and find out whether His Honour Judge Simon Oliver was a ticketed judge. And Oliver had been in Reading from, let's say, late 2011 to about 2017. He heard my case in 2012. He was only appointed a Court of Protection judge in 2016. So why has he been allowed by the Office of Judicial Complaints and the Judicial Ombudsman and others to conduct these hearings when he wasn't authorised? I'm not alone. In one case, Simon Oliver announced that he'd been appointed by Mr. Justice Singh, who was the presiding judge of Oxford, that Oliver had been appointed the president of the Queen's Bench Division to hear a case. I have the transcripts. Others have the transcripts. That's absolutely nonsense. The difficult these people are facing, they are hit with civil restraint orders and extended civil restraint orders, threats of imprisonment, and or are also the seizure of all their assets if they speak out, say they are absolutely silenced. Now, many of us have gone to the police, specifically Thames Valley Police under Chief Constable Simon Habgood, Deputy Chief Constable John Campbell, and the head of professional standards at the relevant times was Detective Chief Superintendent, now Assistant Chief Constable Tim DeMeyer. We were complaining, a lot of the victims, and we were getting nowhere. And recently, some of us have been copying in Sir Tom Windsor, Her Majesty's Inspector of Constabularies, about what had occurred to us and our emails to the police and others. Then in 2018, Sir Tom Windsor, the Her Majesty's Inspector of Constabularies, published a report on Thames Valley. In February 2018, they announced that 35,000 crimes, including rapes, sexual assaults, domestic violence, and vulnerable persons cases, were not being recorded by Thames Valley Police. 35,000 in just 1 year. So here we were complaining to Thames Valley, and we were getting nowhere. This coincides with the recent findings by Paul Morgan Bentley from the Times, who went undercover in action fraud. And he found that less than 1% of cases were being investigated. Now, my case is actually one of the very few that action fraud did address, and they were actually extremely good. Over to you.
Now, just repeat the website at this stage for anybody that's not had a pen, but they can start the show at the beginning and hear it again. It's Judges Behaving Badly blog .wordpress.com. Just let us know if you need a break, Len, and I'll find
Well, I'll just carry on just briefly, then we can drop for a couple of minutes. Now, what actually happened? Not all police officers are bad, but what is of concern when officers of varying ranks and seniority contact me off the record to tell me where to look, what to do, and advise me. Why can these officers not do this on the record? So the problem is at the very top. Now, we know that the Attorney General, former Attorney General Dominic Greaves QC, has specifically wrote to Thames Valley to investigate part of my case, the theft of all my documents. An entry on Thames Valley Police computer, which has been sent to me by an unknown source, shows that the request was deemed as vexatious, and the then acting Sergeant Mark Stevens, High Wycombe Police Station, wasn't going to do anything about it. It was actually later dealt with by Her Honour Judge Campbell, His Honour Judge Ellie, and Judge McCulloch. The two circuit judges spent about 20 hours with me on a one-to-one basis, and Judge McCulloch about 2 hours. What a waste of our judiciary's time, simply because an acting sergeant in Thames Valley couldn't be bothered to investigate. Anyway, it resulted in Susan Andrews, the solicitor from the head of family law, BP Collins, attending court, and having denied being in possession of my financial documents, she was ordered to make a new statement, and she admitted that she had obtained my stolen documents from my former wife. So why did her firm, BP Collins and Dominic Brazil, place all these costs on me, amounting to almost several hundreds of thousands, when they had my stolen documents? They knew all my financial records. That's just a part of this. Now, we also know that the Crown Prosecution Service in Reading had reviewed my case around 2013, after Simon Oliver had conducted this hearing in Reading when he weren't a Court of Protection judge. The case was passed to Thames Valley Police force solicitors, who passed it to the force to deal with it. The case was passed then to Devon and Cornwall Police, and a WPC called Emma Pagg, her now married name is Sergeant Emma Story Barrett, was tasked to come out and see me. Emma Barrett, Story Barrett, alleges that she came to my house, attended, spoke to me at length. I was difficult to deal with, and she then, on the entry on the Devon and Cornwall Police file, is that she sent an email back to Thames Valley. Well, Thames Valley Police can't find that email, but the difficulty Devon and Cornwall Police have, on that day when Pack came out to see me, an officer, very senior, whose background was with the military and special branch, was at my home with one other all day. The force have now admitted that they lied and she never came. That's an example of corruption and dishonesty. However, I complained to Inspector Hammond. He whitewashed it in Devon and Cornwall Police. Then Acting Chief Inspector Chris Hills. He whitewashed it. Then it was elevated to Detective Superintendent Claire Arms, Devon and Cornwall Police. She allegedly reviewed it, found no misconduct, then sent me a file on a completely different case, nothing to do with mine. It's believed she may have posted my case, my files, to someone else. I complained to professional standards. I dealt with a Sergeant Vicky Harper, who's allegedly passionate about safeguarding with Devon and Cornwall Police, and all of this occurred under the supervision of Superintendent Sam DeRaya. Now, this is just an example. Why are we wasting our time with these police officers? So the report was never taken from me, the statement, and it never got back to the Crown Prosecution Service. Now, in 2016, a journalist who lives in America, that's the other side of the Atlantic, I believe wrote to a chief superintendent in the Metropolitan Police, and that officer, his name was Chief Superintendent Downing, Nick Downing. His speciality was fraud, and Nick Downing was very helpful, and he directed me to Action Fraud in around 2016, and the matter was then dealt with by a former Metropolitan Police economic crime detective, Andrew Profit, who was the deputy director of Action Fraud. And I made 2 long statements, and a request was made to Devon and Cornwall that I be visited. An officer by the name of Neil Blackhurst came out to see me with another officer, Detective Constable Buckley. They viewed all these Court of Protection certificates and all the files which had been withheld by my solicitors, Simpson Miller from the Court of Protection, from the Court of Appeal, and from the High Court Family Division. And they went back, and from the files recently, that was the last I ever heard of them. And what had happened from the IPCC have released me their files, the ones that I'm not meant to see. Neil Blackhurst, Devon and Cornwall Police, telephoned Detective Inspector Gavin Tyrrell at Thames Valley. Gavin Tyrrell then took instructions, not from his Detective Chief Inspector. That officer was bypassed. The instructions came from Detective Superintendent Gillian Vanessa Wotton, who was the head of covert policing and special operations at Thames Valley. Then Wotton replied back to Detective Inspector Gavin Tyrrell, and the message was then passed to Devon and Cornwall not to take the statement from me. I was always puzzled why the Detective Chief Inspector was being bypassed. Now I know he had a secondary role. He was an auditor for a Magistrates Inspector of Constabularies within Thames Valley, so that officer was being bypassed. But we have all the files, and the statements were never made. Anyway, Andy, back to you.
Yeah, maybe we can cover the bigger weighted barcodes that we never...
Yeah, we'll go into Court of Protection. We'll have a break for a couple of minutes, then we go into the Court of Protection barcodes and the certificates. Okay,
I'll have a couple of minutes. And again, the website for the judges is judgesbehavingbadly.blog.wordpress.com. And I think there's another website floating around which called the Oliver 8, but we'll find that another time. But
what has actually happened, Andy? The website has been copied because it was ordered to be taken down. I don't know how many people have copied it, but it's certainly up there in different formats.
Okay, no problem.
HorizonTalkRadio.wordpress.com. Now it's your turn. Horizon Talk Radio. Horizon Talk Radio. Talk radio that deal with the real issues.
Yes, sir. Reading you loud and clear. Clear, clear, clear. The clock has started. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
You're listening to the Andy Peacher Show every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday at 8 p.m. GMT and 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah, welcome back. That was a nice little break. Len, do I fire away again?
You said we were going to discuss now Court of Protection medical certificates.
Yeah.
And the whole issue, one of the main reasons I'm fighting this, along with others, is safeguarding. There was a chief superintendent called Gavin Thomas, who was, I think, a couple of years ago, was the chairperson of the Chief Superintendents Association, and he clearly recognised what was going on with vulnerable people. And he said, police officers who deal with vulnerable persons, children, adults, they should be specially licensed so they understand maybe the significance of Court of Protection certificates. Like you're specially licensed when you have the police dog, you have to be assessed and the dog every so often to make sure you're up to scratch. Likewise, when you drive a high pursuit vehicle. But regarding police officers who deal with vulnerable persons, there was no such legislation in force. And I spoke to the College of Policing, and despite repeated requests, no progress has been made in implementing what Chief Superintendent Gavin Thomas had recommended. Now, the Court of Protection certificates. The law firm BP Collins Solicitors, and particular a solicitor at the time, Graham Stewart Fraser, who's now a partner in the law firm ODR, I think, Stock Denton in London, and the barrister Dominic George Thomas Brazil from 1 King's Bench Walk, were able in 2004, November 2004, had me certified under the Mental Health Act, Part 7 of the Mental Health Act, without a medical, by a private psychiatrist called Dr. Jeremy Royds from Signet Healthcare, Godden Green, when NHS consultant psychiatrists and general practitioners, about 4 of them I think, had said my cognition was grossly intact. So at the strike of a pen by a psychiatrist who didn't examine me, all of my legal rights were taken away in divorce proceedings. Very similar to what Christopher Brooker wrote in the Matthews case, which again surfaced with His Honour Judge Simon Oliver. So there I was, certified without a medical. Then, just to make sure I was silenced, Dr. Royce issued another medical certificate. And on this certificate, it was typed Court of Protection. Then he writes, Leonard Lawrence lacks capacity, effectively. Now, recently, about a year and a half ago, 2 people came to my house. They had similar ranks to a chief constable, but they weren't from the police. They were from a government agency, possibly with more powers, and they wanted to view this Court of Protection certificate specifically. And as the man, the lead, said, this is just a piece of plain photocopying paper. He says, as you say, Mr. Lawrence, there's no serial number, there's no barcode, and more importantly, this is the point he raised, there is no Court of Protection seal on any of your Court of Protection certificates, and there's no security embossment on the paper. This is a forgery, and it was used to hold you. He gave me instructions to send this Court of Protection certificate to the Chief Constable John Campbell of Thames Valley Police and the Deputy Chief Constable. I emailed the certificate and I posted a hard copy last year. I've had no reply as to the authenticity of this document. So that's what's happening. Just places a plain photocopying paper with the word Court of Protection certificate on, silences you and takes away all of your rights in court. And they're dealt with by judges like Simon Oliver, who at the time did not hold Court of Protection authorization. I made inquiries recently with the Auditor General as to the number of Court of Protection certificates issued. They have no record. That's because there is no central database of the Court of Protection at or with the Auditor General as to the issuing of these certificates. You just basically go online and print one off. Now, in 2013, there was a House of Lords inquiry into the Mental Capacity Act, and Lord Hardy, who was the chair of that committee, in his printed account, he said tens of thousands of people are being certified under the Mental Capacity Act, and the safeguarding policies are not being followed. In some cases, they are being willfully disobeyed. And that's what occurred in my case. Now, I have a letter from Buckinghamshire Mental Health Trust. They said they were aware of the Court of Protection certificate order, but they have no record of the Court of Protection certificates. Their psychiatrist, Dr. Tony, issued 2 Court of Protection certificates, but there never was a Court of Protection order. And this Court of Protection certificate was sent to, I've got the letter here, they were sent to Mr. Stephen Piper, who was a caseworker in the Office of the Official Solicitor and Public Trustee in Chancery Lane on the 25th of February 2005. And it says, please find enclosed the completed medical certificate for the Court of Protection. Hope this is satisfactory. Dr. Joseph Tony, Acting Consultant Psychiatrist. But Stephen Piper in the Official Solicitor's Office never disclosed this Court of Protection certificate, nor did the solicitor he was working under, Solicitor Helen Mary Cliff, in the Office of the Official Solicitor. It was hidden from both the Court of Protection and the High Court Family Division. Now, we've recovered all these documents, but when we started to look into the Official Solicitor, it was interesting what we found. During the period 2006 to 2009, over 600 families, parents, mum and dad, were certified as lacking mental capacity when their children then faced adoption. From 6 to 9, over 600 families, mum and dads. They were refusing to release the numbers from 2009 to 2019. So wonder how many parents have been certified. Because what happens once the litigant is certified, the Official Solicitor's Office was stepping in, making all the clinical, financial and divorce settlements without the Court of Protection knowing. And because there's no record of these Court of Protection certificates, they could get away from it. Now, there was an inquiry and a hearing by the Bar Standards Board into my case, an inquiry. And Dr. Vanessa Davis was then the director of the Bar Standards Board. And she was advised by Jane Rawson from the former chambers of Mr. Justice Cohen. And the hearing took place. Then there was a number of the judges recused themselves from this hearing. And I didn't understand why. One of the people who recused and wouldn't be a part of this Bar Standards Board review of my case was Sue Carr QC. Sue Carr QC is now Lady Justice Carr in the Court of Appeal, and there was others. But what was interesting, and I now know, that the Alistair Barbado, the then Official Solicitor, wrote to the Bar Standards Board Director and said the point where the Court of Protection was necessary had never been reached. That's why it wasn't registered. We also know that May Morn, the Deputy Official Solicitor, had written to the Law Society and advised them the same, that the point where the Court of Protection was had to be invoked but never been reached. They both lied, Andy. And I had a letter from Dr. Davis, the director of the Bar Standards Board, and as she said, it was very clear in the information you've now recovered. The Court of Protection was necessary. So one only wonders what has been going in this official solicitor's office over all these years. You could be opening thousands of cases. Anyway, we now have got to the stage, we know what's happening, and where do we go from here? Well, certainly safeguarding in this country is almost non-existent. The police officers who, I've had released lots of documents, and one of the most interesting one, I did a freedom subject access request against with Thames Valley Police last August, and within 4 weeks they had released to me their documents. It had been heavily redacted. A lot of things were covered out, but they made one mistake. In 2016, around 2016, there was a returnal review into my case by Detective Inspector Nicholas Watts at Reading CID. And what Nicholas Watts had found, that the law firm BP Collins Solicitors had me certified as lacking mental capacity by Dr. Majera by Signet Healthcare, Godden Green, and under Part 7 of the Mental Health Act, and therefore I was a patient and subject to the Court of Protection. What is interesting, Gavin Tyrrell had actually written to me denying that they'd found anything. He omitted, and so did his senior officers. They omitted to tell me the findings of Nicholas Watts. I had that document. And thereafter, I did a subject access request to Devon and Cornwall Police. It was taken almost 6 months with Devon and Cornwall Police for them to give me the disclosure of their documents. We're still going through those files, and obviously once I find out what's actually been written, I will come back to you. But it did take some encouragement from the Right Honourable Geoffrey Cox QC, the then Attorney General. Now, I had 2 letters, Andy. One from Martin John, who was, this is going back to 2011, and one from his compliance and regulatory, Keith Watts, the compliance and regulatory manager of the Court of the Public Guardian Office. And what had happened, an MP had referred my case to the Secretary of State for Justice, the Right Honourable Jack Straw. And Jack Straw had written to Martin Johns, who was at the time Chief Executive and Public Guardian, asking him essentially, why wasn't I protected? And in the response from Martin John, then Chief Executive, said it was the responsibility of the certificate holder to ensure that the application was made to the court. And he directs blame at the law firm BP Collins Solicitors in Gerrards Cross. Now, I think it was last year, I was taken by 2 other people to see the then Attorney General, the Right Honourable Geoffrey Cox QC. And Mr. Cox very kindly his office wrote to the CPS, and they took advice from the Ministry of Justice, and I have been sent by the CPS and thereafter by Mr. Cox's office the process where I can set aside all judgments in my case without the need to go to the Court of Appeal. It can all be setting aside the harming of a vulnerable person. Back to you.
Yeah, we've only got a few more minutes left, about 10 maximum. I wanted to just comment. I mean, we don't have to discuss it, but I also think I've got 3 little bits to say. Medical certificates, in general, I think they're being abused by doctors that may or may not be taking a bribe, or I mean, they should really be certificated or barcoded as well.
Andy, the way to stop this is that the certificates come from a central register. The Auditor General doesn't know, so they could come from the Public Guardian Office or an office within the Court of Protection, serial numbered, barcode, security embossed paper. So there is a central record of who's obtaining these certificates, where they are going, and there's a full audit trail. If I go and buy a car, or you buy a car, first of all, we get a logbook. The seller has to notify DVLA, and we have to notify DVLA where the owner is. We have to insure it. DVLA is notified. We tax it. DVLA is notified. And when we go on the roads, the ARPN knows where we are in that vehicle at all times. You get someone who's extremely vulnerable, a certificate gets issued from a high street solicitor, printed off a computer, and no one knows what happens then. And that is how they're getting away with it.
You know, I was referring to GP medical certificates and death certificates. Just as an example, you've given a very good one of the Court of Protection, but I think all certificates, full stop, should be barcoded or done on the proper paper, or done computerized or whatever. Yeah, because.
But then if they did that, they couldn't get away with what they're doing now, Andy. That is why, like I say, we need to...
You just said the big word earlier, safeguarding is the answer.
We need to recruit DVLA to go into the Court of Protection to show how to audit documents. I mean, again, you get thrown into the long grass. I can recall, I've got a letter here in front of me now. In desperation, I wrote to Lord Justice Sir James Mumby in November 2006. In fact, I wrote to his then clerk, George Pidgley, by return of post, right? One day later, Lord Justice Mumby gave approval to George Pidgley to release to me a judgment. I think it was G 2003 to Family FLR 42. If the President of the Family Division can respond to a letter that quick, and his clerk, 6 months for a data subject access request from Devon and Cornwall Police. And Thames Valley Police don't even want to speak to me now.
Well, yeah, and I had another point. The Bar Standards Boards, I don't know if a lot of people realise this, but the majority of lawyers who go into court and they're doing liquidation. Sorry, that's not the right word. They're taking your court case. They're not actually registered with the Bar Standards Board to take on litigation. Definitely not.
Well, here's an interesting point. Alistair Walker, who is the chair of the Criminal Bar Association, he published an article. An article was published how barristers are being bullied by the judiciary, and he actually sent a copy of that was sent to me. So barristers are also being bullied. So are solicitors, but we can talk more about that maybe at a later time. But the fact remains, I was certified without a medical, and Court of Protection certificates were issued. Part 7 certificates were issued. Only a judge in the High Court Family or Chancery Division or a ticketed Court of Protection judge could have dealt with my affairs. But by not disclosing these to these judges, then these solicitors and barristers and some unscrupulous judges are getting away with it. And people are being asset stripped, and others are having to pick up the pieces. And that's what's going on. And in Thames Valley, it's got so bad that you're now seeing this website created, which was created, His Honour Judge Simon Oliver, judges behaving badly. You see in the Oliver 8 website, there'll probably be more. And, I mean, when you look at some of these cases, I'll give an example. We'll take the case of Sarah. Sarah is being kept in Reading in a care home. She has cerebral palsy. Her mother lives over 100 miles away. Sarah's about 40. The mum's in her 70s. The mum has to come all the way down from Wales to see Sarah, then travel home, so she can only spend a little time with her. According to the file I saw, the mother, the Thames Valley Police have no objections to that woman, that disabled lady being retransferred to Wales. Yet Simon Oliver is refusing that transfer. There's the case of Jean, a similar case, having difficulties seeing his partner. There's the case of David. David's in a care home in Reading. His mum, David's around in his 60s. His mum, I believe, is 90. They're both in different care homes, but Simon Oliver is not allowing David to see his mum. What is wrong with this man? Now, Simon, to give me his correct title, he's presently the Provincial Grand Orator of Berkshire Freemasonry. Now, what is interesting, people associated with Simon Oliver's lodge has been to see me, and they've had a long talk with me, and they've told me exactly where I should be looking. There are Freemasons out there. One, we call him Ray. Ray is a Freemason. He wrote to David Staples, the Grand Secretary of English Freemasonry, to draw what's been occurring with Simon Oliver to the Freemasons' Grand Lodge in London's attention. And the response back was, "Worshipful Brother Ray, spiteful." There we are, Andy. What's going on?
Well, back to normal, isn't it? Judges are behaving badly. That's what's going on. So can we cut this short before we get the pips? And I'd like to thank everyone for listening. And here's my website, and then I'll be back in the future, and I'll put all the links to the websites underneath the YouTube video.
HorizonTalkRadio.wordpress.com. Now it's your turn.